This budget hearing conducted by the Committee on Appropriation and Adjudication will now reconvene with the Department of Parks and Recreations. I want to thank all of you for being here this afternoon, and I'll dispense with reading my opening statement, and we'll just go straight to your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Benjamin J.F. Cruz, Speaker of the Chairperson of the Committee of Appropriations and Adjudication of the 34th Guam Legislature, thank you for inviting us to present our budget. I'd also like to thank Senator Mary Camacho Torres and, of course, Senator Tommy Morrison for their presence here. Buenas and Hafa, Honorable Speaker and members of the Committee of Appropriations and Adjudication. Thank you for the opportunity to present the Department of Parks and Recreation's DPR fiscal year 2019 budget request. The Department of Parks and Recreation is seeking a fiscal year 2019 appropriation level of $3,701,857, which is approximately 1/10 an increase from fiscal year 2018. The increase is required for maintenance and personnel and utilities, and ongoing service contracts for the maintenance of our island-wide park restrooms, park grounds, and addition of the comprehensive facilities maintenance and operations of the Hagatnya and Northern Pools. Our funding source is the Tourist Attraction Fund, and our fiscal 2019 request is, as I stated, $3.7 million. Our fiscal 2018 authorization was $3.2 million. The core mission of the Department of Parks and Recreation is to promote health and wellness through community recreation programs and facilities, clean parks and park restrooms, and to protect and preserve Guam's historic cultural resources and for our island residents and visitors alike. The Department of Parks and Recreation utilizes parks, recreation, and park enforcement data to track park usage and service delivery. Based on this data, the use of the Department of Parks and Recreation managed facilities and programs have experienced an annual increase of approximately 8% annually and continue to rise as more facilities are improved. The following table depicts our request of fiscal 2019 increase levels in the following areas. In personnel, our fiscal 2019 request is $2.632353 million, and our operations and utilities $356,063, and our contractual services at about $713,441, for a total of $3,701,857. The Department of Parks and Rec mandates are carried out by the Parks Division, the Recreation Division, and our Historic Resources Division. The major objectives of each of these divisions are as follows. Our Parks Division completes the classification of parks within the Guam territorial system. They improve and maximize the usage of our park facilities by developing a park improvement plan. They reduce the operational and maintenance costs of the park system through contractual and outsourcing of services and engaging in a public-private agreements. They also expand the current level of open grass area and green space. We develop the additional play lots and multipurpose sports fields. And of course, we complete the closure of the current public cemetery and open a new public cemetery. Our Recreation Division do community programs to provide, initiate, and supervise health and physical fitness to benefit the community. They also initiate and supervise community recreation and park facilities and the supplement of equipment for those programs. They also provide a safe and clean environment at our recreational facilities. Our recreation division, which consists of the pool and beach, they provide well-operating and clean facilities with the emphasis on safety. We build a complete team of certified lifeguards through full-time and part-time hires, and we set standards for lifeguards to maintain themselves both physically with trained skills. We also promote health and physical fitness to benefit the community. Our Historic Resource Division continue to conduct area surveys island-wide to determine the extent of site preservation, site damage, and destruction. They also implement the 2017 and 2021 Guam Historic Preservation Plan. Purposefully endeavor, strive, and aim to preserve and protect Guam's historic properties, and actively engage and invigorate communities to be involved in the preservation and planning and activities. Steadfastly seek, pursue, and establish strong partnerships in and with the communities, including the departments and agencies. Thoroughly assess the state inventory system and determine how to better provide and access information on historic sites and properties. And we continue to protect historic properties throughout Guam with the mechanisms and processes established by laws and regulations. The divisions are of the administration of the Director's Office, and the amount requested is $964,775. Our funding source is the Tourist Attraction Fund, and it consists of 9 employees. Our Parks Division requested $992,145 coming from the Tourist Attraction Fund with 22 employees. Our Recreation Division amount requested was $731,194. And the Tourist Attraction Fund is also that funding source with 17 employees. The Historic Preservation Division requested $288,602. The funding source, of course, is the Tourist Attraction Fund with 3 employees. Also note, please, that the funded vacant positions are included in these figures. There are a total of 2 funded vacant positions for the Department of Parks and Rec's fiscal year 2019 request. That is the Territorial Park Patrol Officer, commonly called the Rangers, and a lifeguard position. The 2 positions are critical in order to maintain the minimum staffing levels for the respective divisions and necessary to provide for a safe delivery of services to our patrons. In closing, the Department of Parks and Rec would also like to make mention of our department's urgent need for several critical managerial positions not currently included in our submission. These positions include an Administrative Services Officer, a Territorial Park Patrol Supervisor, and a Park Maintenance Superintendent. All positions were previously staffed by the Department of Parks and Recreation, but recently vacated. It is also important to note that as a number of personnel in our department continues to decline due to retirement and other cost-saving measures, our mandates remain unchanged and in some circumstances have increased as a result of our island's growth. Therefore, it is critical that the Department of Parks and Recreation be staffed appropriately with the noted technical and professional staff in order to fulfill our mandates and navigate during doing more with less. We thank you for this opportunity to present our fiscal 2019 budget request, and we look forward to answering any questions you may have. I also want to note, Mr. Speaker, that our director, William Regis, is out on a personal matter. He's not been feeling very well. And I also want to recognize Senator Regine Biscoli and, of course, Vice Speaker Therese Terlahi. Thank you for being here. And thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Maybe I should have read my opening statement. We're going to need to justify all of our requests, okay? So I'm going to have a series of questions.
Thank you.
Because this just doesn't cut it for me. To start off with, though, in your testimony, you make mention of these positions in your paragraph that starts with "in closing," that these positions were vacated recently. How recently, and why haven't they been filled?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The positions were actually part of the original staffing pattern from 2018-2019. The individual that filled that particular position, Ms. Melva, I can use names, right? Okay, Ms. Melva vacated the position in late November. And as a result, upon recruiting, we were informed by the Department of Administration that because of the size of our entity, that particular position would no longer be available to us.
But this legislature had provided for it, and it was in the budget.
That is correct. And we continue to work with the Department of Administration to try and regain that particular position. That's why we mentioned it in the budget request.
And I think you need to mention it at Adelup more than you need to mention it here, because we funded it, and you guys need to be able to fill it, but you guys need to work with Adelup and not with us, because we funded it. How about the other position of Territorial Park Supervisor?
The Territorial Park Supervisor, sir, is the position that was vacated with the sudden death of Mr. What was his name? It happened prior to my time. Individual passed, and the position was vacated. And so when we went to attempt to fill it, again, DOA had taken that piece away from us.
Again, it was funded in the 18 budget. And
that is correct.
And the Park Maintenance Superintendent.
The Park Maintenance same situation. Retired, and we went back in to fill it.
And how long ago have these positions been vacant?
It's my understanding that the last two were vacated, I believe, in June or May or June, and the first position I mentioned was vacated in November.
And so then the question becomes, since you've managed to operate without them, can you do without them for the next fiscal year?
That's a really good question, Mr. Speaker. To my right seating here is Ms. Nora, and she is our administrative officer, and she had to work diligently with other agencies in order to put together this budget request that we're presenting before you today. And in past experience, I imagine that these informations were easily accessible by the positions that were being held by those individuals without having to go outside the department to get that information. So
you also have your experience and your director's experience that could have assisted in putting that together, and Ms. Uggins. I'm just trying to...
That too is correct.
Okay. There's also the lifeguard situation. What is the lifeguard situation?
Presently, the lifeguard situation, when upon recruiting the recent lifeguards, well, we were informed by the Department of Administration that the certificates that the lifeguards, in other words, their level of certification, only qualified them to be recruits. And in years past, that certification was used in order to recruit lifeguards. Okay, so our recreation administrator is working with DOA and, of course, the Red Cross, who provides that certification, to ensure that all our lifeguards are certified at the right level as provided by I guess, HR through the Department of Administration. We also would like to recruit...
My concern is that according to our records, you're to have 9 lifeguards. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And how many of them are limited term?
Oh, I have that.
Or LTAs?
LTAs, lifeguards are 6, right? 6.
Why? Why aren't they FTEs? Why aren't they classified employees?
Well, that, again, has to do with the criteria of HR. Okay.
Well, why would you hire someone who wouldn't qualify?
No, we
as
would
a
hire the qualified people. It's just that they would have to meet other criteria also.
Well, then they
during the
obviously
course
aren't
of their...
qualified if they don't meet the criteria for the position. Why are you hiring people that don't meet all the criteria for a full-time classified employee as opposed to a limited term employee who maybe doesn't have all the certification that is required for the safety of the community and the public at large on our beaches and our pools?
I understand what you're saying, Mr. Speaker, and I will get back to you on that particular response.
Well, because I really have real concerns about LTAs. I don't want any political hires just to pick somebody up there because he's home for the summer and he's not fully qualified. You need to have people that are classified, and we've given you enough positions. There's no excuse for it.
Understand.
All right? So I don't want to see any LTAs in that position. Get them fully certified or find somebody else that is going to be certified, because that's not somebody that I want to be there because they attend pocket meetings and can put up signs. Okay?
Understand.
The Park Service, again, why do we have LTAs in there?
On the Park Service Division?
Is there an employee in the Territorial Park and Seashore Protection Division that is in LTA? Or you're asking for an LTA in that position? Why are you asking for an LTA?
Yeah, we have 3.
There's 3, and you're...
That are not LTAs. 3 park rangers that are not LTAs, that's correct.
Are what?
They're not LTAs.
But you're requesting for 1 additional officer, but in an LTA position.
That's correct.
Why?
Because it was a funded vacant position.
I understand it was a funded vacant position, but was it funded for an LTA? Was it funded for a full-time employee position?
It was funded
Classified.
it was funded for an LTA, correct?
No, you're,
That was the 111, right? Yes. No, yeah. That was a funded LTA position, Mr. Speaker.
we, in our budget last year, I don't see that I've authorized LTAs for your department in 34-42. Trying to figure out if we're reading the same law, because you keep saying that your budget request is going up. I mean, or last year was only 3.2, but actually your budget last year was 4.3.
3 the reason why it went up this year or this past year was because we picked up the parks administrator, the recreation administrator, there's 5 positions, right?
I understand, but in the budget law, from the tourist attraction fund, we appropriated 3.2, correct?
Correct.
We also appropriated 172,000 from Public Recreation Service Fund, 600,000 from the limited gaming, and about 400 from the general fund, for a grand total of 4.3.
This one, right? Yeah, 4.3, that's correct.
So I'm trying to figure out why you guys keep talking that your authorized level last year was only the 3.2, admittedly just from Territorial Attraction Fund. But the authorization from this legislature was 4.3.
Yeah, I see that.
And so that position of Park Ranger LTA, again, when we give you a lump sum like this, who made the decision that that should be an LTA? Because we don't make decisions from here that that's an LTA.
I don't know, and I will get back to you.
Okay, please.
And I apologize for that.
Under historic resources, you have 3 employees funded with local funds. And as I understand it, you get a Department of Interior grant of about 411,000?
That's your side. Yeah.
Yes.
In the current budget, we provided 394,868 for the historic division. And that's that top line there on the general fund.
Yes.
But this year, you're only asking for 288. Is the committee to make the assumption that you can do with that lower amount? Because I know your champion at the end of this line here will hold up my budget until I give you the 388 if I don't.
No, we can't do with that amount. I think that was just for the 3.
She got it in but didn't vote for my budget, but anyway.
I think that was just for the 3 local positions, right?
Okay. Can I explain? No. Okay,
Yes.
so the 394,868 for the current fiscal year, it was 267,935 for the 3 personnel, local funded. We subtracted that, and we got $126,933 to use for projects. With the consent approval of the director and myself, or the officer. Of the $126,933, we got budgeted for $76,983 to be used. $49,950 went to utilities. The balance now is $65,526. That's the balance now. We've spent, of the 76 back then, 11,800, so the balance is 65,183.
Okay,
So, yes, sir.
that really doesn't answer my question. Should this year's budget include a provision for 388, or should it have 288? I mean, 394 or 288?
If we included the non-funded positions, archaeologists and historic preservation, we need to increase that to fund those positions. We practically, and I might get in trouble for saying this, sir, but as you know me, I'm very upfront. We have to beg for the position. We have to justify it with 10 pages of why we need an archaeologist. We've done it in the past under Director Peter Calvo.
And that's why I probably should have read my statement in the beginning. You need to justify that now, because I know
Yes.
that the Vice Speaker will insist that this be included at some point. But you need to somehow explain on the record today, so that she doesn't have to explain it on the floor, why we need to put 394 in here and not 288.
288.
So please.
Yes. We have, currently in the office, there's 6 of us, but 7 funded, 3 vacancies, 1 under federal and 2 under local or general fund. We run 7 programs. 4 of those, the staffing that I have, deal with 2 program areas, and 1 deal with the administration. We're neglecting to do the survey and inventory comprehensively. We're missing the coordinator to go out to the community, as you can see with the goals that we stated here. And with the National Register, that's being contracted. The staff currently that's supposed to do that is really out there in the community doing public education awareness. We have the review and compliance, and this is the big ticket item in our program. Last year we reviewed about 1,900 permits. No, that's just permits. We did about 300 and some federal reviews, and that's 4 personnel doing all the reviews, not to mention all the reports coming in, et cetera, et cetera. So we do need staff to do those reviews and to go out and enforce. And the other one we're lacking is to go out there and enforce permits, or if they have permits, if they don't have permits, to issue notices of violation, stop work orders. We don't have that luxury of sending someone out there to roam the island. And we cannot use the park rangers because they would have to be trained. So if you want my justification in writing, I'll provide that for you.
Please.
Yes, okay. So there is a need to increase the staffing.
So at least, yeah, provide us with written justification for that, please, because when the committee goes through, we need to have it in the committee report. Otherwise, it's just going to be a motion on the floor that some will understand and some don't. And
Yes.
thankfully, you have a champion that's going to fight for you. But we need to, if we had it, we could have included it. It just, so now I'm asking it up front. Explain everything that you need. Otherwise, when the budget goes out, it's going to go out without that. And then I'm going to be held up on the floor because there's going to be a fight to try to include it. But if you just tell us now, we can try to provide for it.
Yes, sir.
Okay?
May I add that this is the first time I've been involved in the actual budgeting of of our division. Back then, we were never given the opportunity to provide our input. So I will be very active from now on,
Okay,
and I'll
but,
provide the justification.
yeah, I'd much rather that it come up front as opposed to being backdoored by it of,
I
okay?
understand.
So that where I can plan for it up front rather than have to try to take it from somewhere else after I've already allocated everything. So I need to know everything up front and not when we start to go to the floor and go, you didn't recognize me.
Yes, Senator.
And though I understand that you don't have an ASO, I note that the executive budget request has the Parks and Recreation at 3.6. You were asking for 3.7, and we were trying to figure out what it was. Did you guys neglect to include your water and power? Was that's the only way that we could figure out that there was $100,000 difference. Is that correct? Turn on your mic. So the request from you today is 3.7,
That's correct.
and that the difference is that water and power that wasn't included, or at least coincidentally is the same amount of money that seems to be the difference between your request today and what the executive
correct.
budget is. Okay?
Yes.
So I just needed to get that on the record.
That's the one.
You have under contractual services a $50,000 island-wide park ground maintenance. Can you explain that? And are you guys interfacing with the mayors? Is that absolutely necessary, or can there be savings somehow? Were the lines drawn between, like in PD, at the park there? Is that taken care of by the PT mayor, or is it you guys that does it? Whose responsibility is where?
There are, Mr. Speaker, parks that are being managed by the different mayors, and we're grateful for all that. But for those that are not being managed by the different mayors or by any other memo of understanding, that's what this particular line item is for. We still have to go around and pick up all the trash that is being left, and we still have to pay the tipping fees and all that other stuff. So that particular line item covers that.
And you have an item that's marked service contract under public recreation service funding for $48,000. Can you explain what that is?
48K on the... Okay, this 48K 233, is that what we're referring to?
Yes.
Okay, that is a service contract taken from the special fund, Public Recreation Services Fund.
Who's the contract with? For what?
I believe this one is the JJ Global, the grass cutting around the Paseo area and other areas that are not being handled by either a mayor's office or a memo of understanding with any other group that may be out there providing these kind of services.
You have under your office an $8,000 for burial service?
For burial? That's on this one, right?
It's quotes burial services.
That fund is used to dig the burial plots up at Tiguac.
And 8,000 is the full contract for that?
I don't think eight is the only.
Well,
fund.
that's why I'm asking,
Yeah.
because it,
It's a lot more than that. I can get back to you on that one, Mr. Speaker.
yeah, because it looks a little strange.
Yeah, it does
And
to me
if you
too.
have, do you have anything in your SOP that says, for this family, I will handle the burial and we will pay for it? For this family, we won't?
Not to my
That's-
understanding.
That's got to be.
I'll get back to you on that one too,
Okay.
Mr. Speaker.
And acronyms make me crazy. What is a BPA for emergency water pipe damage? 5,000 in the director's office.
BPA is the acronym for a blanket purchase order. We have a lot of issues where, we're not trying to point fingers at anybody, but we can go change a water spigot out here at the Paseo at night. Come back the next morning, the water will be running full blast. So what we've done to help us with that situation is we've literally shut the water off at the Paseo at night. And we use these funds to address those kind of issues that may either happen overnight or maybe down at EPAN or someplace like that. That's what the blanket purchase order is for. I mean, I wish we had a design for a water shower, where no kind of damage could be done to it, but we don't have those kind of things available.
Okay. And how was this dealt with prior to this year?
I'm sorry, say that again?
How was this dealt with prior to this year?
It's always, I believe,
With a BPA?
well, the other, sometimes what we have is we'll have a blanket purchase order at either Benson or someplace like that where the guys can on an emergency procurement go out to those locations and pick up those kind of parts necessary to do the repairs. Yeah.
Under equipment, you have a request for 15,000.
It's this one.
What is that for in,
Okay, Mr. Speaker, the 15,000 was or is for maintenance or purchase or upgrades to the bush cutters, riding mowers, lawn mowers, chainsaws, printers or computers and accessories. That's what that amount is for.
but under miscellaneous repair services, In the miscellaneous object category, you have a request for $551,900. What is that for? It's huge.
That one was this one. The contracts and stuff like that, right? Okay, Mr. Speaker, that sum was for contractual, like the maintenance of the restroom facilities, maintenance of the pool, maintenance of the pool, the maintenance, and things of that nature.
You're going to need to send me a
Breakdown?
breakdown
We will.
of that, okay? And why did you put it under miscellaneous as opposed to contractual services?
As opposed to...
Under contractual.
services? I have to get back to you on that one, too.
Okay, going back to historic preservation, you have an $11,000 request for contractual services for advertisements. Can you explain that amount, and is that sufficient?
Excuse me. That's for the lease of the copier, Xerox copier. That's for advertisement.
And the website. And the website.
And our website.
And is that sufficient? Okay. Also, in the Paseo Stadium funding for 2018, there was a $30,000, but the current staffing pattern has 121,400, which is far in excess of what is budgeted. You've been hiring additional LTAs.
These were the new LTAs that were brought on board upon retirement of the regular employees. There was like 4 or 5 of them, right?
And why didn't you use their funding for those vacant positions? See, that's the problem that I'm having with LTAs, which we didn't authorize, okay?
Yeah.
So, I'm having problems with trying to justify why you needed these additional LTAs.
As far as the LTAs that were brought on, they were just a wash of what had left of the employees that retired, or I think there was one that passed.
Well, but that person that FTE had a funding and a funding source.
That's correct.
And that should have been used to fund that person. What in our review, we're looking and we can see that it seems that money was taken from historic preservation, which to the committee means that somebody at Parks and Recreation deprioritize historic preservation to satisfy your funding needs in Paseo. Is my assumption correct?
Necessarily Paseo, but the parks grounds.
But the appropriation, the 394 that was specifically provided for, that was fought for on the floor, for historic preservation, was undermined and was taken for a different division, which it was never intended for.
Correct.
I'll let your champion handle that. I just wanted to point it out that it looked to us that that's where the money came from. And so, okay. The former director can ask if he wants any. Do you have any questions before anybody else?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Titano and DPR staff, Lyndon, team for being here. I kind of bit puzzled looking at the authorized levels for 2018, fiscal year 2018, and seeing the requested amount, as the chairman mentioned here, at $3,700,000. It's about a $700,000 drop, and I'm just looking at the Parks Division here, and I certainly appreciate how you're trying to manage this, because most of these folks here were there when I was there, and I'm just wondering how you're, with now looking at this, I was assuming that maybe that's where the big drop came in, was these vacancies, because these were folks in the maintenance department or the parks building. At one point had a high level of folks in there that I know were ready to retire as well, and I know some have passed on. And looking at your contractual services, I mean, how many parks are right now under contractual arrangement with ground services? Or so I'm just looking at the Parks Division here, and
I have that.
are most of these LTAs that are for sale doing dual roles as well, assisting the Parks Division in maintenance of parks and recreation facilities?
That's correct.
I was assuming that, because these positions here, I think they'll look pretty tough to fill, trying to get these positions, looking at their job descriptions. And I was always wondering if when these folks, or through attrition, I mean, that these monies will reprogram to contractual services, therefore are outsourcing more of the parks that these individuals once were tasked to oversee. Are you still looking to moving in this direction? Instead of filling these positions, are you looking to outsourcing more parks, reprogramming these? Well, obviously they're vacant, zero funded right now, but I'm just concerned that if you're not moving to fill all these positions, because this is a lot of folks that have departed from the department in such a short time, that have and knowing how much ground that we have to cover out there, I'm wondering if if those LTAs are going to be converted to ground workers or laborers, or move into more contractual services. Is that the direction we're looking with the parks side? Because, and that's why I was asking how many parks are outsourced right now, because I'm not sure how this is being run right now with so much guys that are gone now.
That's been our challenge, Senator. Many aspects of the different parks are in fact being outsourced. And what it does is it provides, there's a model in place, you know. The model is a good model. I mean, it's one that allows the government a tremendous amount of savings, you know, and it makes good business sense to engage in those types of contracts where the usage is high, you know. But then there are some parks out there that just don't get the high usage and stuff. So we're still going to need the personnel to address those particular parks. As far as the number of parks that are contracted out today, we have about 32. And then on top of all that, we have the restroom facilities that have been a real good model for the Department of Parks and Recreation. Rather than maintain personnel to keep these facilities up and running and up to par, it has been a good partnership between the private sector and the department, and it's been beneficial to everybody around. I mean, I'm sure that you've made visits around the parks and seen how they're maintained. And granted, I don't proclaim that we're the very best. I mean, we try to do our very, very best with what we've got. You know, and case in point, when I initially started at the Department of Parks and Recreation, I'd drive to work in the back through the Paseo and around and park. I can go out to a meeting and come back, and I would see a whole bunch of trash again. You know, and they're things that we know we can take care of. Okay, but it's still going to require our people to do that. And we augment the general cleaning of the area with those contracts. And those contracts have been beneficial to everybody, to the contractor as well as the Parks and Rec, and most especially to our visitors, because they're able to see the beauty of what we have there at the Paseo. I invite you to come down and have lunch at the Paseo. You'll see it's a pretty clean place to have lunch, sit down, enjoy the waves and things like that. And you know, in the past, it's probably been very hard.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, right now we're doing what we can with what we've got. And I'd like to see more partnerships. I'd love to see us get away from having to hire people to do all these things and employ other companies, you know, to be able to handle this. I think it's a beneficial way of keeping the parks clean.
I certainly
keeping our
agree.
islands attractive.
Seeing how much folks have you lost in such a short time, because
Right.
these folks were there when I was there, and they were really good workers, and obviously they moved on, and some have passed. But I think maybe that's why I asked if you have 32 parks, there's still enormous coverage to take care of.
There's still a lot.
I'm just hoping that maybe this is the time that if maybe it might change a direction and more of outsourcing more of the parks, and these positions will be redefined, or, you know, I don't think you're going to need some of these titles here. Maybe most of them will be ground maintenance, but I'm really thinking this is a time when we start coming back for budget requests that we'll be looking more at outsourcing, reprogramming, instead of picking up folks, reprogramming these monies to contractual services so that we can outsource more parks, because it's challenging to pick up these folks. It's going to be a challenge to recover from all these individuals have left DPR, especially in the Parks Division. So I think it's it's time to maybe change that course and start moving into contractual, because I appreciate that now we're up to 32 parks that are outsourced, but I think it's time to change. With the limited gaming fund, of the 608,518 that was authorized for 2018, how much have you received at this point? The limited gaming fund.
I think to this point, Senator, yeah, up to 606 from 2018 or 608 that we were authorized in 2018. I believe we received all that. I can get back to you on that also.
What was your estimate right now? What did you estimate you received?
We're thinking that we may have received the entire amount.
Okay.
Because if we didn't, I'd have a note here saying something to that effect. But I don't think so, because if I'm not mistaken, with the taking away of the gambling with the liberation, I think that fund lowered. So I'm not sure. I don't know the answer to that question right now, and I'll get back to you on it.
Okay. Well, that was a fund that I know that assisted with the repairs of the Seattle Stadium, and a portion of that was also supported by federal grant. But I would like to know how much DPR is receiving from that fund to support recreation and sports facilities.
I will get back to you on that, Senator. Thank you.
It's going on the lifeguards. Those that are on LTAs, DPR, the lifeguards there are known to certify.
That's
and
right.
working, certify and all law enforcement, majority law enforcement here in Guam, and I'm kind of surprised that these individuals that are still in LTAs, are they going through the process right now of certifications? Because DPR has been known to certify most law enforcement entities out here with regards to first aid, CPR, and training.
And we continue to work towards that goal, Senator.
Okay.
Of course, as I explained earlier on the other challenges we had with the simple certifications, that part we're working on to put ourselves back to where it was before.
Right. No, I'm glad
because we used to be the certifying agency for that.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I'm just almost done. I just wanted to point out one more thing with the limited gaming fund. I know you'll get back to me on how much, but I hope that we could get some data on this, because this is a fund that we've been tracking, and hopefully it's being used accordingly for what majority of all these parks and facilities, and not only Paseo. I know majority of it was used for the stadium and with a grant for FestPac to get it up and going, but a lot of those sources were to go out into those parks and recreation facilities in the different municipalities to help support those communities out there. So, DPR if DPR is not getting that funding source, we would like to know, because even with the Mayor's Council and DOE, we like to know how that fund is really being utilized to assist these communities out there. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator. Maybe the way that you can help the Senator, and especially myself, why don't you, under a separate letter, send me a list of all the parks that you guys have jurisdiction of, and next to it, whether or not the maintenance is contracted out to who, and if it's not contracted out, then so that both Senator Morrison, I, and the rest of the senators would have a better understanding of what's happening with all the parks.
We can provide that
Okay,
information.
thanks. Vice Speaker?
Thank you. My questions are very similar to the speakers, and it's pretty much, it looks like the overall budget was, compared to 2018, was reduced by about $32,000. So you're asking for less this year, but that the Historic Resources Division was cut by is asking for $106,000 less than what it asked for before. And the Paseo is asking for $100,000 more than it received in 2018. I guess I wanted to ask you if you could just explain what's going on at Paseo. Why is there such a big difference in the 2018 versus 2019?
I'm going to have to get back to you on that one, Senator, simply because those are large amounts, you know, and I wouldn't want to provide you with a with the wrong answer, if you will.
All right, well, just for the record, FY 2017 Paseo personnel was $37,000 total. FY 2018, it was $30,000. And for 2019, the request is $123,000. And then for the Historic Resources Preservation personnel went from $315,000 in 2018 to the request is only for $277,000 now. And it shows that there remain 2 vacancies. And I don't understand that, of course, with the challenges that our historic properties are facing.
Yeah.
And then there's the contractual services, and maybe you can explain this. The $79,000 appropriated in 2018 has been reduced to a request for $11,000.
Okay.
So it's not just personnel. Personnel
yeah.
significantly reduced and also contractual.
It was the 11,800 is what we spent. The remainder is 65,000 something. I don't know where it's going, but we do need to maintain our equipment. We do need to spend that somehow. I mean, we have a list of things that we need to do. Senator, as you know, that our federal grants, they come late. And they would only give us the obligation or authority for personnel salaries and benefits, and essential operations. So after that, we have to wait for the grant agreement so we can spend the entire budgeted, proposed budget in that grant agreement. So we need those local funds to help us maintain our vehicles, to fix up our air conditioners units. So I don't know where that money went, but the $11,800 was what we spent. So they're asking for $11,800, assuming we're going to spend it on the same things. Website, the Xerox.
Why are
sleeves.
you not able to spend the $79,000 that was appropriated?
79,000?
Yes, it says 2018 you were authorized $79,000 in contractual, and now you're only asking for $11,000.
No, we can spend it. It's just that, like I said, I don't handle the budget, and that $11,800 is what we've spent. So they just brought it to the 2019.
All right, well, maybe that's when you write your letter to the speaker, we can't understand. We will not be able to understand this request. It's your request, so it's coming from your department, and the request is for $100,000 less in personnel, well, less than that, but 315 minus 277, and then almost an $80,000 lower request for contractual services for your division alone. And okay, so we'll wait for the explanation on that, but it's significant. And then I wanted to, in the law, right, I think we've heard of this problem, or the legislature has been aware of this problem for years, because they have budget language that I'm sure was not new this year, but had been put in from prior years, that says funds allocated in this subsection shall be expended exclusively for historic preservation positions and projects as advised by the Guam State Historic Preservation Officer and approved by the DPR Director. So they tried to put in it's not allowed to be transferred to allocations to any other division or any other department or agency of the government of Guam. That's what the law says. So I guess if you could please explain if any transfers have occurred, by what authority and how much, and why the request is so little. Because it doesn't, every time we've asked the Historic Resources Division issues about enforcement, it's our understanding there's practically none unless somebody sees it and we call your office, and that's when you might be able to check something out, or when a permit comes across your desk. But the actual field and the destruction of historic property that's occurring out there is for the most part going unmonitored on a daily basis, and I don't think that's what anybody wants. So if you could please clarify. That's it. Those are my only questions, in addition to what the speaker asked about these positions regarding the parks and the park patrols. Does the park patrol, by the way, have jurisdiction over the preserves?
The park patrols are like peace officers. They have jurisdiction just like any other peace officer. As far as the preserves are concerned, it's because of, I think the agriculture is the one that handles those aspects.
All right. All right. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you all for being here this afternoon. Mr. Chaitano, I understand that the Department of Parks and Recreation recently received some federal funding to rehabilitate and maybe build more recreational facilities. Could you give us a brief about that and maybe tell us the timeline that you're looking to implement these projects?
Thank you, Senator. Yes, you're correct. We received a grant of about $5.2 million. That grant will be used to...
I'm sorry, could you just repeat the amount?
I believe it was 5.62 million.
5.62 million, okay.
Right. And that grant is and will be used to refurbish many of the basketball courts, baseball field, a couple of baseball fields, and a couple of gymnasiums on the island. We are at this point in time putting together the game plan, if you will, to identify and determine the amounts that will be necessary to do this.
Mr. Chaitanya, that wasn't required in the grant application process for you to present a plan before the money was received?
You're correct. Basically what it is, you want me to read it?
Sure.
Okay. The Department of Parks and Rec applied for a $5.62 million Department of Interior Capital Improvement Program grant, and the Assistant Secretary presented that to the Governor and awarded the grant. DPR is tasked now with the management and maintenance of the Guam's public parks, historic resources, and recreation and sporting facilities for our island residents and visitors alike. The conditions on Guam present a challenge in the maintenance of these facilities, which experience accelerated deterioration as a result of their general proximity to the ocean. This project intends to provide for preventative maintenance, repair, and renovations of our public recreation sports facilities and park restrooms, as well as provide for new recreational facilities to relieve the demand placed on the existing populated public venues. Our goal is to provide safe, clean, and accessible venues for residents and visitors to participate in sports and/or family activities. This is part of our agency's effort to promote physical activity, health, wellness, and overall improved quality of life. The Department of Parks and Rec has 16 public park restroom facilities, renovations, and refurbishment, and a replacement of 10 public outdoor basketball court facilities, tennis court, and 1 sports complex. It will retrofit lighting on a couple of the parks and replace auto bowlers up at the Governor Joseph Flores Beach Park, also known as Epal Beach. The design built 7 recreation facilities, restrooms, baseball field, and pool pump room, and the gymnasium, and the design build of a security GCTV system for multiple public parks. So basically what it does is it encumbers a significant improvement to existing facilities, as well as maintenance and upgrades to those areas.
Thank you very much. That's really good news. And I hope that once the plan is completed, you can share it with the committee so the rest of the members of our body can be aware of that as well.
We will, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I also received a letter from an 8-year-old girl named Marion recently,
Okay.
and she just wants to ride her bike. Her parents feel that Guam's roadways are very dangerous, and so she asked me, and I wanted to ask you, if there are any bike paths in the different parks on our island or places where you would recommend that are safe for her and other kids on our island to go bike riding.
Okay, which part of the island are we talking about? Okay, because if she's up in the northern facilities.
I believe she lives in the south.
In the south, okay. Down south, unfortunately, the roads, may not be able to accommodate that, but I know that we are completing the construction of the baseball facility down there in Pneumatic, and I believe that has a large enough footprint that may be able to accommodate safe riding. I think one of the other things we may want to start looking at, Senator, is assisting the mayors possibly in providing bike. We see them all over the world. I mean, there are bike trails everywhere. And what they've done is they provided bike lanes so that bike riders can safely maneuver through the streets as vehicles do on public roads.
It's my understanding that any roadways that are paid for by local funds are required to have bike lanes, and I think that was a bill that was passed by former Senator Ben Pangilinan. But we have some challenges with that, and any federal funding, I'm not sure if that still holds true.
And I'm not sure if that mandate is one of our mandates at the Department of Parks and Rec, or is it a mandate with maybe possibly one of the other agencies. But it's a great idea, and what it does is it safely marks the roadway for the safety of the bike riders. I mean, we've had problems, and we're aware of it.
That being said, would DPR consider using a little bit of this federal funding that you're receiving to build more bike paths in our existing parks?
I would have to get back to you on that, Senator, but it's a great idea, I mean, great ideas begin someplace, and it has to be carried through.
Thank you. Thanks for getting back to us.
Thank you.
It was widely reported in the news that DPR had to shut down some of their facilities over the past few weeks and months due to the fiscal crisis. And I wanted to ask if you could tell us how much savings the government realized from closing down the parks and the Hagatnyo pool and the Dedado pool.
Right off the bat, we did experience a really good amount of savings, and that's simply because we were able to go into those parks that weren't being utilized and that we were actually paying power to. We actually had parks that, for example, we had a park down in one of the villages, and I won't mention the village, but as a result of the meters simply being in place, we had to pay a fee for that. So we identified 4 or 5 locations with that, and we were able to have them just completely disconnected. In addition, what we did was with the Paseo, we were able to shut down completely the water. And we're still looking at what kind of savings we actually received from that, but I'm sure it had to be significant because of the time frame that we did close it. The situation that occurred up at the Dedido walk path, if you will, that was a result of the old solar panel lights that were deteriorated and just falling. We've got a contract in place that's pretty much coming to completion, and those lights will be reactivated hopefully in the next month or so. And those are high efficient LED type lightings, and they are run on the landline. We've also provided that same type of contract down here at the Paseo on the walk path, as well as the lighting that was there at the Angel Santos Park going up to the Fort Soledad and around the, I believe it included the Adalupe loop, the area there. Because a lot of people use that for walking and stuff. And we just want to make sure that we can provide to them, you know, where possible, as efficiently as we possibly can.
Thank you. Mr. Taisno, can you maybe tell me how these savings impacted the general fund, as I know that that DPR is primarily funded through the Tourist Attraction Fund?
I don't have an answer for you on that, Senator, but I can get you one.
Can you also tell us what led to the algae bloom at the Hagatño pool in recent weeks? They've had to close it down, I think, on 2 different occasions.
Okay, on the on the swimming pool, there was a report that the levels of chemical weren't correct or whatever, but that is not true. The levels that we operate within were within the standard, the acceptable levels, if you will, for the quality of water to be used by patrons. Okay, we voluntarily, actually, the Department of Public Health and Social Services sent an inspector over to us, and they did an assessment, and they at that time measured the water quality as well as inspected.
Would we be able to get access to those inspection records?
I'm sure you can. It's public record.
Okay.
And what we did, with an abundance of caution, of course, is as a result of not having certain chemicals on site. Mind you, we're in a transition period right now where we've contracted the maintenance of the pool. Okay, so as a result of that, it was a turnover period. And so what we did was we made sure that we provided the chemicals necessary to continue operation.
Okay.
And we closed the pool for 1 day.
Okay. How much do those pool chemicals cost annually?
Oh. We were working on that PO. What did it cost us? I don't have the numbers for you right now, accurate numbers, but we had just received those chemicals, and they are on site, and the pool is safe.
Because I can tell you from personal experience, in the past 2 to 3 weeks, specifically on Tuesdays and Thursdays when many swim clubs practice,
Right.
the pool is green. It's disgusting. So much so that when there are swim meets on Saturdays, some of the kids are getting sick. And so I'm just extremely concerned about that.
Senator, we keep a log of our readings, and that was made available also to the public health inspector. And they were within the acceptable levels of bacteria, if you will, okay? Some of the causes of the pool getting green as quickly as it does, of course, is we live on Guam. You know, the heat, the rain, those are all contributing issues that can create the water to appear like you're saying, you know, I mean, green and yucky and all that. And I don't doubt what you saw, you know. But what I can assure you is that the safety of the pool water is kept at an acceptable level. Otherwise, we shut it down. We will shut it down.
So we're taking a look at a decrease in your budget of $100,000. Does this include the chemicals that are used for the pool?
For the maintenance you're talking about?
Yes.
No, we have a, no, we will not decrease the whatever for maintenance of supplies to maintain the pool. The decrease is coming from the fact that that part of the maintenance will be handled by a vendor,
Right.
which
So-
decreases our personnel costs.
Okay, right. So the speaker had brought up earlier, there was a $551,908 listed under miscellaneous. We were saying that it should probably go up to contractual services, since you mentioned that this amount is for contractual maintenance of restrooms and the pool. So if you could, again,
We will provide
the
the breakdown
committee,
of that.
yeah, the breakdown
Yes.
of the pool
We will.
maintenance contract in particular, I'm interested in seeing that.
We will do that.
Okay,
Senator.
Sujos Masi.
No problem. 550K.
Thank you, Mr. Taitano. I was wondering, many of the concerns and questions that I had were raised by my colleagues already, but I was wondering with regards to the inventory within Department of Parks and Recreation, all your facilities and your grounds, what is the practice for inspecting those facilities, all-inclusive, for safety issues, structural soundness issues, or any hazards that need to be identified and addressed by your agency or other corresponding agencies that could facilitate? So, in other words, is there a proactive program to assess and determine the integrity and safety of every structure under your purview? Who is that conducted by? How often? And if there's any relationships that you have, like with DPW or others, to accomplish that, how is that done? Including, for example, the structural integrity of the pavilions at the parks, at EPOW, or the park in PD, or any of the parks in the villages.
Yes, we do. We have a relationship with the Department of Public Work when it comes to the structures. The recent situation with the Paseo, where we were getting ready to open the GML, and we had some spalding issues. We have to remember that the Paseo Stadium is located right on the waterfront, and so the integrity, just like any other concrete building that is that close to the ocean, it has its challenges when it comes to concrete spalding as a result of the rebars that are embedded in the concrete. So yes, we do have a relationship with the Department of Public Works to ensure that the integrity of the buildings and structures, as well as the pavilions that are on the outlying beaches, are being inspected. And we have a parks administrator that, with the park superintendent, that go around and inspect for these types of integrities. We also have the Department of Public Health and Social Services that we have to pass health clearances with. And in addition, of course, we have our own Department of Historic Preservation that ensures that we just don't put things up or move things around without first clearing through, like the Department of Public Works. So yes, we do have these relationships, and yes, we are grateful that when we call upon them to assist, that they make themselves readily available to us, such as with sinkholes and things of that nature. The Department of Public Works responds very quickly to those types of requests.
So you know where you have an inventory then and an action list for any structure or asset that may be rusted, cracked.
We have SOPs for
all
that,
of
yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then to what degree would you honestly say you rely on civic organizations to pick up the slack in our public parks insofar as trash collection and maintenance. Because I hear so much about the regular activity that they have, and it begs the question if they're out there doing that on a weekend basis, 4 weekends a week, sometimes 5 if there's 5 weekends in a month. 4 weekends in every month, I'm sorry, up to 5. Then to what extent has the Department of Parks and Recreation not fulfilled their obligations if civic organizations have picked up a tremendous amount of the burden? Can you just comment on that? Because it concerns me.
Oh, absolutely, Senator. And, we're really blessed to have some tremendous civic organizations out there. If it weren't for the type of work that they help us with throughout the weekends, and some of them even do it during the week. They'll come and help us clean up the park, pick up trash, rake the beach, things of that nature. Donate trash bags to us, gloves to pick up trash with. If it weren't for people like that, we at Parks and Rec accept all the help that we can, and we'll have people available to guide them during the weekends or whatever. That we get volunteers to do the actual work. We're really blessed with those kind of people coming to us and assisting us with these, because it's our island, and if it weren't for their help, and if it weren't for their generosity, we can't do it by ourselves. We only have 51 people in our entire organization.
But I wonder too if in looking at your budget, we also need to revisit what the enforcement mechanism is then to ensure that the abuse of our public parks is controlled. And I think that that's another aspect, because we seem to be very complacent about allowing people to get away with things. And there's a way to monitor who uses, and there's a way to ensure accountability, and there's a way to also prohibit people who are abusers from accessing public parks and resources. And so I think that we have to have a better scheme in terms of surveying what is broken, because I don't think we truly have an action list on how to address broken and deteriorated and hazardous components of our public park system. I don't believe that we're on top of that. I also think that we rely too much on volunteers without due compensation and consideration for them in terms of the investments that they put into removing and disposing of garbage. And then the third, I don't think that we do enough in terms of policy and allocating resources to ensuring that the culprits who are responsible for damaging, vandalizing, and robbing us of assets. I understand that a lot of times fixtures, simple faucet fixtures, things like that are being stolen. So there has to be a better way that we control all of this, because as we can look at the budget and determine that it's a manpower issue, but I don't think that that's necessarily it, because there's so many components that we have in the works that that need to be also shored up and provided for in some way. But I would like to speak with you in depth about that regulatory side of your agency and with regard to the usage of our facilities, because I think that is where we're almost turning a blind eye, where we really should be throwing a hammer down and cracking down. But I want to support you, Mr. Taitsino, and I think we all just want to gain control again of these assets of our island.
I agree with you, Senator. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to just follow up on what I was addressing earlier, and maybe maybe if you could provide us some information on what would it take to, if you looked at, right now you got 32 parks that are outsourced, and you're looking at the park system as a whole, what would it take, if we took a direction to outsourcing the whole maintenance system, at least starting with the grounds, and then maybe also, maybe a separate proposal seeing what it would take also, because when you look at your staffing pattern, like Senator Torres was mentioning, at one point, yes, you had a building maintenance supervisor, building maintenance, structural electricians. You had all those folks to go out there and on a day-to-day basis to assess these structural or electrical or plumbing. You had a plumber, you had operators. You don't have those today. So we need to figure out the direction, a direction that would maybe take us in a direction where that it will outsource the maintenance of parks, and facilities. And maybe if you could provide us that, what would it take to outsource the whole park system? Right now you got 32, so you're going that direction. We at least like to know, we can project out every year if we have to reprogram monies to contractual instead of trying to pick up people. Because just yesterday, with an agency, a very critical agency, all agencies are critical, but a critical agency that is supposed to collect money for us is having challenges trying to recruit. So I just don't want to continue down this path knowing that trying to fill all these positions to address the challenges of the park system, which impacts our tourism industry. We certainly need to look at that and see how we can work with the different partners and the source of fundings that you get from, such as GVB, and seeing how the whole park maintenance system. And there's also certainly a way to look at this if we can get these skilled laborers in parks to maybe that be part of the scope of the services, so not only ground maintenance. And certainly we got to see how those proposals look. It may be a wash, maybe a little bit more, but when I'm looking at this section here, Mr. Taitano, we really need to help you out. We need to help DPR out. At the pace this is going, it's going to be completely a mass. There'll be no maintenance, DPR. So we really need to take that direction now, have those proposals ready, and we can look at them and see how much like the speaker was mentioning, how much you're already outsourcing. What would it take, aside from trying to fill all these positions, and reprogram and just outsource the whole park system? Is it working with your chief planner if you could provide some information on that and see what it would take? I'm sure you can probably provide some numbers and see where we can go from there.
Thank you for that advice.
Yeah. Maybe you could provide a report back, see what it will look like if.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Does Department of Parks and Rec have outstanding compensation due to employees, like prior obligations?
All right.
Are there like outstanding compensation due to employees from prior years?
I know there was a request filed with the Attorney General, but I haven't seen anything back from that yet.
Could you check that and also send an update as to that? If there are any outstanding prior obligations, I just want to know whether that needs to be included in FY19 or not. And then what is the status of the Central Sports Complex? Do you have a plan? How far along are you on that?
Central Sports Complex?
Yes. There were 43 acres in Teton that the mayor of Vergara wanted transferred to Vergara, and the Department of Parks and Rec sent in testimony saying that they were in the middle or almost towards completion, I thought, of planning for a central sports complex in part of that area.
Yeah, I'm aware of the discussion with that particular location, but I haven't seen the law.
All right, if you could send an update.
Because there's a separation there between one federation and the mayor's office or something like that.
Yes, if you could send an update as to what is
Okay.
the status, is there really a plan, and how would that be funded? The Umanic baseball facility that you talked about, how, for example, is that funded?
That is a federal, that is part of the 2017
Block grant?
block grant, yeah.
From, you mean Gura?
Yes.
All right,
Yeah, and that I believe should be completed in the next couple of months.
all right. But the 5.62 million from Department of Interior is separate from what's been given to Gura? or
That's
the Gura-
correct.
Okay,
That's correct. That's a previous grant.
all right.
Yeah.
And then, this is relatively minor, but I've been receiving some calls regarding the paddlers' use of the marina in Hagåtña. They're being required to move their boats every evening. They're not allowed to park them on the shore. And I guess I just wanted to know, what is the policy that I think the director had told me personally that it's they were an eyesore, or that it looks better with them far away. But how do you find that? Is that very inconvenient for the paddlers to move their boats away from the shore?
You know, Senator, that's an item that's been pretty hot down at the Paseo, because the Paseo is a limited location.
Yes.
The situation that was created down there was the fact that EPA was finding tubes in the water and stuff, and Department of Parks and Rec was being cited for that.
For inner tubes, like fishing?
No,
Or-
for tires. The tires they put the boats on, they'd find them in the water. We would get hit on that.
Okay.
I made that call simply to accommodate the paddlers for their safety as well as the safety of their boats. Okay, there's been quite a few boats that park down there. And what
Yes.
would happen is people would come in and they would take relief on the boats. And I didn't think that was very nice. So I wanted to provide a location for the boats that was safe for them. With every new move, there is situations.
All right.
What that has done, though, for the Paseo, it's allowed for a greater number of people to use the location, to enjoy the waters and everything. It was simple. We either moved the boats from behind the two baseball fields, truck them down to where they would normally launch, and everybody else has use of the facility, or they could take the boats home and have to bring it down and launch them every day that way. I think it should be noted also that as far as the law is concerned, launching from or onto the waterway is not allowed.
It's not allowed
No.
where? In the marina or anywhere? What do you mean?
On that channel, it's not allowed because you can't ingress into the channel safely with boats coming out through the channel. Okay, so it was something that I felt also that they should be aware of. The safest place for those boats would be on the other side, in my opinion again. But you know, I'm the one that created the problem. So
What do you mean by the other side?
the other side where the sewer island is.
Okay.
You know,
All
it's
right.
just that because of the
I just want to know what the explanation was, so
yeah,
that
it was.
I could also share that.
I actually made that decision so that everybody could have greater access, safer access, and more access to the Paseo grounds.
All right. And my final question is, does DPR have jurisdiction over Matapeng Beach?
Yes, yes,
So you know the parking lot at Matapeng?
yes.
There's a certain portion there that's not been usable for many,
Yes.
many years, maybe since it was built. And it's not just not usable, it seems to me
It's a pond.
to be a health hazard. It's
actually-
a ponding basin, and it's gross. People
Yeah,
use
see, the
the
initial
kids walk through it when they try to get to their paddling events. And what is the issue? Whose responsibility is that to take care of?
It's a sinkhole. It's a natural sinkhole. Okay, and the design on that was to where the
Are there any efforts to do anything about it?
I believe we're working on correcting that situation. And you know, there's also an issue with the hotel there.
Yes, that's
because-
why I'm asking. I
Yeah.
want to know whose responsibility is it, because it sat there for the longest time. We all know that the hotel and the beach goers are sharing parking space down there, pursuant to perhaps some very old agreement. And I want to know if you know who's responsible and what potential is there to resolve that in the very near future? If you could just
I'm sure it
update
can-
us on that. I'd
I'm sure it
appreciate
can be resolved. It just takes a lot, not a lot of time, but it takes time. And we're working on correcting that situation.
All right. Appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you all for your testimony.
One last question for clarification. This $5.6 million from Interior, is that a compact impact grant? Or is that just a regular grant out of the largesse of Department of Interior?
Compact impact? I believe the,
It's a compact impact grant?
yeah.
Okay, thanks. We stand in recess until Tuesday, May the 29th.